This is Tim.
This is Jason.
And this is Critiquing Comics.
You have a theme song?
Yes, we do. Welcome. Welcome to Critiquing Comics. This is Tim in Tokyo with Jason in Portland, Oregon. How are you?
I'm good, partner. How you doing? Thanks for having me back on.
All right. Sure, yeah. Well, went very well the first time, so I thought we'd do it again.
What is your metric of success of it went very well? Like we're still speaking to each other?
Well, no, I thought you had good things to say about the other comic we did, so.
Oh, I tricked another one. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. So I do teach comics, so this is always good to see. And usually I'm teaching scripts, so it's nice to see something that's further along and finished.
Yeah, okay.
So tell me about this book.
Okay, this is called The Zombie Game. Writer is Dan Bridges. Executive producer, whatever that means, is Gary Ambrosia. Artist Pablo Ayala. Letterer Lucase Gattoni. Editor Emily McGuiness. She's the one who contacted me about this. Okay. They're kickstarting it as we speak. And by the time this goes up, they might have reached their goal because they're pretty close already.
They're doing great. They're at 3,200 of a 4,000 goal, and they have 25 days to go.
Yeah.
So, first, they don't need our help. I can tell you that. They're going to do great. They're going to do gangbusters.
Yeah.
And it is a really nice-looking page, actually.
So, the story here is basically there are some young people who go to a house.
You sound like someone's dad. There's some young...
Well, I am somebody's dad, so and my kids are probably about the same age as the people in this story. So they go to this house where there's supposedly a party being held, but then some of the people are sprayed with something, and it turns them into zombies. And then the rest of them have to try to make their way through the house, and it's set up like kind of a game. And like there are different levels, and I didn't quite understand that.
Is it a house? I thought it was like a rave, like it was like a warehouse rave space.
Yeah, well, could be. This comic made me feel like I need a service dog, like the service dog who's in the story, because I feel like I've lost my eyesight. There seems to be a decent story here, but I can't see what's going on. The art is so dark, and I mean, now to be fair, the PDF that we were sent, they may have, compressed the graphics a bit so that it wouldn't be, 1 million megabytes, right. And so that may make it a little blurrier, but still, I mean, it's really hard to tell what's going on in a lot of cases in this comic.
Well, let's start with the good.
Okay.
The script is pretty good. Like the character dialogue is good. I mean, I can't read the script obviously, but what I'm seeing on the page as far as characterization and dialogue is pretty good. I think I caught like one. There were two scenes back to back of the dog and people asking if the dog was lost. Two different people said the same thing to the dog, but I think the script is pretty good. I think the camera angles of the art is actually superb. Like the way they lay out the panels and the perspectives and the choices they made there were actually really good. Those were like varsity level camera angles and perspectives. So I think you feel what the characters are feeling quite often based on how the visual decisions that they made. There's also a video game aesthetic, as you mentioned, that I think really works really, really well. So on page there's a level 1 double page spread. And I actually am a sucker for double page spread chapter heads. I think that's really fun. And it's a level 1, and this artwork, to me, you can almost hear it. It reminds me of the old, if you play like the early versions of Doom, it's sort of like really dark and it's clanky, and it really creates an aesthetic and mood that I'm into. There's a loading screen. I think that's cool, actually. If you can take the time to set an aesthetic and tone. And then the art, Yes, the art in this PDF is a little. It's not crisp, so I'm assuming it's just the way it was sent to us. But the art style is, I would say, it's closer to. It's digital, and I would say it's closer to like Ben Templesmith.
Okay.
And that sort of scratchy, painterly, just highly sort of emotional style.
It's close to photorealistic, except that it's very dark, especially when they're in the house. And I mean, I was hard pressed to even say how many characters there were in the story, or how many people were making their way through the house, because there seemed to be a lot of pages where people were screaming and reacting, and I couldn't tell what was happening.
Okay, so you mentioned that the partygoers were doused in a sort of spray or fungus or something. I didn't catch that. There are some. Okay, now that I'm done saying the nice things, I also want to say some of the party scenes. The colors are great. I think the colors of this book, the color palette they chose, actually works really well for the genre.
Yeah.
I think the aesthetic works really well for the genre. This feels like a zombie book from the get-go.
Yeah.
There are some storytelling clarity issues that I just think they will iron out as they work more. But for example, the main character is a vet, and the characterizations of all these characters, there's a couple of characters. There's a football player who's injured. There's a young lady, it seems like she's going through a breakup, and she's going in to this party. But they're at the door, for example, and the main character has a service animal. And there's a confrontation about, you can't bring that dog in here. And then there's a panel with a sound effect, and I've blown it up, and I've looked at it. I can't tell you what is happening in that panel. I don't know what is happening. And then I assume they left the dog outside, but then like a page or two later, the dog is inside. So there's little like continuity things that I can't follow.
Yeah, I didn't understand why the dog went in after they said no dogs.
Yeah, but there was obviously something going on in that panel, and again, it could be just the downsizing of the PDF. But I was not clear what happened to the dog. And look, I own 4 dogs. Like, I'm very worried about this dog throughout the entire first act. The dog's always running up to people, and they keep asking if it's lost. Put that dog on a fucking leash. Come on. I'm terrified. That dog better not get hurt. The other thing, story clarity. There's also a frat boy scene here at the beginning. We're learning about the main character. He's a vet, and he's 32 and in college, and that's about the age I was in college. I could totally sympathize with him. But they run into a group of frat boys, and he gets really mad. And he's like, I'm fucking done with these assholes. And I'm like, yeah, I totally get that. And then, like, a panel or two later, they're all gone, and for some reason he has his dog, like, smash his head into his friend's nuts. And I was like, okay, so you had all these like asshole frat boys that totally deserve a good nut smashing. You let them go and you attack your I just don't understand their relationship. If I had a friend who was sicking his dog on me like that, I don't know that we would be friends. And what was the other thing? So here's the other thing. Like at the very beginning of this book, like I love the aesthetic of the game and the devil's chapters and the loading screen. But like right off the bat, there's a statement about out. This book starts with 3 statements, 3 big grandiose statements. One is there's a dedication to outcasts. Okay, but then there's another long quote about being an outcast, and then there's
one from Masha Gessen, one from Maurice Baring.
And then one from the team itself about being an outcast. Do you really need all 3? Do you need 2 separate statements about being an outcast? Like, if you're reading comics, especially if you're making comics, you're probably an outcast. There's a 95% chance you were picked on in high school, or So I don't know that it's a bit. Let me say this: it's an unsubtle start. It is sort of. I find having 3 giant statements like that is a little bit overkill in the beginning, but to each their own. But when you say that much before a story starts, it almost feels like you're collecting an award. But I do think this team has something here. That the writing is good. There's some visual things that are just not connecting in the art.
Yeah,
and part of that could be the blurriness of the PDF, and part of that could just be it's really dark in that club. The setting is dark.
Yes.
There are splashes of color that look really awesome. And I skipped ahead. I only critically read the first 44 pages. But I skipped ahead towards a later scene that was like really bright and well lit. I'm like, oh, this works. Like I can tell who these characters are again. I can see the physical grammar of the characters and what they're doing. But they're in the dark parts of the club. Like he is opening a bag with a bomb in it, and like I needed someone to tell me that was a bomb.
Yes,
because it was.
Yeah, me too. Like, is that real? Is what real? What is that?
Yeah, and then a character dies, and I'm like, I don't know who that was.
Yeah.
But it is done. It is 144 pages. And I imagine the print would be crisper. When I look at the art on the
134.
When I look at the art on the Kickstarter page, it looks crisper than what we were given. So this could just be partly the PDF thing.
Mm-hmm.
What was the other thing? Outsiders. Yeah, just some of the action I think is unclear.
Yes. And I got to the end, and there's a scene where they're going over a wall that I found really confusing. Because, like, somebody's they're using a rope to, like, pull people over or pull them up to the top of the wall. And then it seemed like one guy, somebody had tied themselves to the dog, but then the dog came untied and fell back down in somebody else's lap, and then somebody else was trying to go up with the dog, and then somebody else that was the part was really confusing. Somebody else was like trying to stop them, but then I couldn't tell who was who there.
Yeah, I do have a hard time telling them apart. I should also just want to call it the letterer did a great job. This is a very well-lettered book. The colors are great. The layouts are great. The writing's pretty good. There's just the darkness works against a lot of it.
Yes.
But I think the print version, like a high-res digital version would really help.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, I'm looking at that scene again. I guess it makes sense. So I can't tell you anybody's name, but I think it's the vet who's holding on to the dog. The dog's name is Leg. I know that.
Yeah.
But then another guy, and I don't know who this guy is, kicks the vet in the face. And then the next panel, the kicker is holding the dog. See, that was what confused me, because suddenly the guy in the dark shirt is holding the dog. Okay. Yeah, all right, but I wasn't sure who that was and why the vet hates him. And the guy in the dark shirt wants the rope, and the vet doesn't want to give it to him.
Yeah, I think we're just having. There's another. I have not gotten to that scene, but there's a scene earlier where one girl smashes another girl's head into a door, and then I'm not really clear what happens next. It looks like they're falling down like a long shaft.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but look, I don't want to dog these guys too much because they made a graphic novel. They made a 140 or 130 page graphic novel. It's done. It's ready to go. And if you support this project on Kickstarter, you're going to help this team get to the next project and the next project and the next one. And I'll say this is if this is their first project, it's better than my first project. It's better than my first 3 projects. I just think there are some art clarity issues. I think is the big hurdle.
Tim and Paul race to the scene where a 1960s Batman TV episode needs analyzing. The show's attitude toward civics.
A loyal taxpayer stooping to criminal methods.
Toward women.
A dish.
Toward time management.
All in all, Batman, you've been pretty busy.
As well as the history, the casting, and more. Tune in via iTunes or Stitcher, or visit tothebatpoles.libsyn.com for
To the Batpoles.
Also, a couple things at the end kind of surprised me. Like, I thought that it was the end, but it sort of left some dangling threads I didn't get. I thought maybe, what is there, like a sequel coming? wasn't clear.
I mean, you always got to leave that sequel door open. I did not make it to the end. I read the first level. I read the first 44 pages. And I felt like I had an opinion from there.
Right. Well, we always say we'll read at least 30 pages. And after that, it's just kind of up to how you feel about the book. So
if I had more free time, I will probably finish this at some point. I do think the color work is really good. I think it sets a tone, sets a mood. The aesthetic is strong.
And like you said, the writing is pretty good. There's some humor in it. It was nice dialogue. I was wishing I could see the characters better.
Yeah, there's a lot of. It's like often when we meet characters the first time, we're not seeing their face really well, and that makes it harder to connect with them. I know I always say that, but like on page 13, we're meeting the couple. I believe they're a couple breaking up. It looks like, and you really can't see either of their faces.
Right. So then you can't tell who they are, and you don't know when you see them later if that's the same person or not.
Yeah, it makes it hard to connect a little bit.
Yes.
But, great start to a career.
And also, I was puzzled about the vet because, the vet has the service dog, but I wasn't picking up the vet being injured in any way. Well,
the first time we meet him, he's having a nightmare about his service, about his time in the service. Right here it is. First time we meet him, he's having a nightmare about war.
Yeah, and
his dog is waking him up. So I definitely think we want this guy to have a service dog. First time we see him, we're seeing his a tattoo on his arm, probably from his. I've never been in the military, but I'm assuming, guys who are in the same unit or they get the similar tattoos. He is, and there's a picture of him there's a blurry picture on the nightstand with him in his uniform with one of his buddies. Saying, and I think the dog is just there to help him,
By the way, I'm not going to spoil this, but having read the whole thing, I thought they did a good job of sort of giving you a hint of why some of the characters did not turn into zombies. The characters that we're following.
I did see that, and I liked that. And when I skipped ahead and read a little...
Because I did notice that clue before, and I thought, why are we seeing this? And then I got to that point later, oh, okay, that makes sense.
That was good. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was a positive.
So what would you give this? A B? Let's grade. I'm a teacher. Let's give it a grade. It's ambitious. It's really ambitious. It's really long. Anything in the zombie genre is a commercial property. This will make money. This will find a home. I'm not worried about them at all.
I guess the art clarity problem, and again, it might be partially this file's fault and not completely the artist, but for what we received here, let me say a B-, just because I was so kind of annoyed with trying to figure out what was going on.
Yeah. Yes, I'm looking at the elevator scene. I think it's an elevator scene, and it's really dark, and I just don't know what to look at. Yeah.
Yeah, are you talking about there was some kind of a dumbwaiter, I think? I only picked that up from the dialogue.
Page 32. Well, you thought they were in a house. This reminds me of, there were clubs in New York.
This elevator.
The Limelight is a big club. It just reminded me of parties that I would have gone to back in New York of the day. But, you should always support emerging artists, and they did all this on their own. You mentioned there's an executive producer. Can I take a guess at what an executive producer does in this context?
Okay.
Probably bankrolls it, probably paid the team. Because this is a big project to do on your own time. A lot of comics are made sweat equity, you do it and then you put it out. And, a 30-page comic is one thing. But doing something this long and this polished... would take a lot of this. They spent years on this.
Yeah, I mean the art definitely took a long time, and it's there's some back matter at the end, but the last page of the story is number 125, and it starts on page 4. So plus there's a cover. So yeah, it took a long time to do this.
Yeah, so this is a Herculean effort, and to do it in the indie level on your own, like if I had to guess, that's where the executive producer came in.
Okay.
And if any executive producers want to bankroll my next book, let's do it.
What grade would you give it?
I would give it a B. I think it's really ambitious. Honestly, my biggest complaint is that there are 3 statements at the beginning of this thing. And if I picked this off the shelf, I would probably put it back down because I just feel like that is, it's just, you know what I mean? It's just, it tells me right away that this is not a subtle piece of work.
Okay,
you're telling me that much how to feel about something.
I'm not finding the statement from the authors. I see
page 1. There's something about this is for all the outsiders.
This book is dedicated to all the outcasts that never get a chance to shine. Okay, yeah, and then a couple pages later we have the other quotes about being an outcast and.
Yeah, and a good editor would just trim it down. Like, pick your favorite one, or don't have any. Like the book is going to accomplish all those things for you. I just really chafe at being told how to feel about a piece of art before I make it. And then having 3 statements telling me how to feel about a piece of art. Like that just really annoys the hell out of me. It's just pretentious. And it doesn't need it. Like the art does so much of that heavy lifting for you. Like there's a loading screen. Like I get the game aesthetic. And if you're making a comic book, like we're all outsiders. Like you're telling other outsiders you're an outsider. It's redundant. All right, that's my critique, and I'm sorry, but I do think I think it's a worthwhile book.
Yeah. Okay.
That's what I would change. Is not even the book; it's the beforehand stuff. Sorry, Emily. Yeah, you should support it because they did a ton of work, and it's well done, and it's complete. And I am just a teacher, and I look at everything critically, but I give it a B, solid B.
Yeah.
What have I got cooking? God, I don't even know. I didn't want to talk about myself anymore. I'm teaching. I'm wrapping up my teaching, and then this comics, lots of comics, so many comics, Tim.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, if you would like us to critique your comics, send a PDF or a link to mail@deconstructingcomics.com, and we'll read at least 30 pages of it and critique it on the show. That's the spiel I memorized a long time ago, so I don't need to read it or anything anymore.
I just feel bad. Like you always want to tell, I don't know. You're in a tough business, Tim.
Well, we certainly found positives in this too. It's just that the art's a little hard to follow sometimes.
Yeah, I look forward to seeing what they do. I'm going to follow that campaign. I bet you they're going to do great.
Yeah, well, they're already doing great, so yeah, they're definitely going to make it.
All right. Well, then let's trash it some more.
No, I don't have anything more to say about it.
All right. Well, good job, Zombie Game, and I think you're going to be very successful, and I can't wait to see the next book.
Check the show notes for the link to the Zombie Game Kickstarter. Thanks to Jason for critiquing with me. Find his work at jason-mcnamara.com. That's McNamara with an MC. Last time on Critiquing Comics, Emmett and I talked about Pierre Dola's comic, The Corona Bible. I found that Pierre is from the Netherlands, not Poland, by the way. He responded to our critique. Thanks for the critique, even if the idea of the comic, it's the contrary to what you get just reading the beginning. In the end, the comic, it's a worldview of the world confronting Corona with an anti-conspiracy message. But to get to the message, you have to read more than 80 pages. Whoops. But I cannot complain. First, you read only 30 pages, and with the second pod, you got to 80. So I guess if I make 50 more comics, maybe you will finish one after 49. The Rothschild stuff was only because it's the cliché. The beginning of the comic, it's a satire about the stupid things that people believe. But I never got the idea that saying that just because they got a Jewish last name, they represent a religious belief. I'm not anti-Semitic. In fact, I'm an anarcho-communist radical closer to Antifa than Trump. but I find it cool that you get the total wrong idea of the comic just by reading the beginning. If you want to get a better idea of what the comic is, could you read the segment that goes from page 220 till the end? I swear that it's more clear in the message. Thanks for your message. My advice is, brevity is the soul of wit. Your comics would benefit from being more concise. Also, study some satirical comics to pick up how to make clear that your point is satirical. I missed the anti-Semitic thing entirely, but that satirical point was completely lost on Emmett, and probably some other readers as well. Thanks for listening. Our theme is from bensound.com. Support us on Patreon at patreon.com/deconcomics. Next week on Deconstructing Comics, Emmett and I discuss Stan Lee and the Rise and Fall of the American Comic Book by Jordan Raphael and Tom Spurgeon. See you next week.